I'm delighted to welcome to the show and introduce you to Xernona Clayton.
Well, gee, thanks for the flattering opening. My goodness, that was wonderful. Could we do it again?
We can't do it again, but then that's going to cut into the time as a talk show host.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just so humbled to get to tell your story. So many amazing accomplishments, and your humility has always risen above everything else about the work you do. But I just want to start with the work that you did in the civil rights movement, because we know that you were present when there was a call that Martin Luther King or Andy Young or someone was taken to jail. You were the one who was making the calls about how we're going to get the attorney on the phone and get the bond paid. You were behind the scenes. You were doing the work. What was that like?
Oh, of course it was rewarding. You're sad that they ran into brick walls.
Right.
But we knew why we were there. I was just talking to somebody yesterday about how did you handle all of that? And I said, well, Dr. King talked to us all the time. He said, forget that you're here for yourself. You're here to change the system. So don't worry about fighting. You know, violence was never something that he would endorse. And so, but people would get angry, and like he would say, those horrible people in some city who were determined to hold on to the old way it was done, and you get mad, and then you want to hit him in the nose, and he said, you're not here for your personal fight. We're fighting to make change for everybody. And it helps to endure and to face the obstacles that you're bound to face with.
Absolutely.
And that was his greatest contribution to all of us, you know. You're not here for you. You're here for
all of us. As I look at this photo, this historic photo of you with Coretta Scott King, Dr. Martin Luther King, Sidney Poitier, you were always close. You were always a trusted confidant. You were not on the outside, but there aren't as many photos of you as there are of the men who were in the movement. But I understand that was by design. You just wanted to do the work. Explain.
Well, first he didn't want us as women out there in the trenches doing the work that the men were doing, because it was dangerous and very difficult. But there was so much to do. See, people don't realize there's more to just getting up marching.
Right.
You got to have preparation for that. In case they get thrown in jail, you got to have bonds money. So is the money there? They get hurt, you got to take them to the hospital and injured. So there are a lot of phases.
And I remember reading that you had to know specifically, depending upon what state, what city he was in, where they would take black patients if he was injured, or if the other freedom fighters were injured. You had to know a lot and be able to plan ahead.
And then deal with it once you got to the hospital. I mean, I went to the hospital several times to take some of our injured people, and you could feel the presence of anger and prejudice. And like Dr. King said, you're not there to fight your personal battle. You may not like what they're doing. And I always had a very, what I call a balanced countenance. Like, I wasn't here for argument. Don't get me started to fight. I have an injured person here, so let's take care of the sick, so to speak.
The task at hand.
So your focus is different. And so we as women had a lot to do. And we did it. And we did it in harmony and with beautiful spirit.
You sure did. And you did so much more, even beyond your work with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and the National Urban League, doing investigations into housing discrimination. But at some point, you ended up in a space where you were tapped to be a talk show host, and not just any talk show host. You were the first black woman to host a talk show in the southern United States, and it was right here in this building, what was then WAGA television. So let me just say, I thank you and welcome home.
Yes.
That's the interest we pass every day, and to see this picture of you coming in off of Briarcliff, what was that like, and how did that happen?
Well, this morning when I came, I had the reminiscence of coming in here, meeting Harry Belafonte, because he was a guest on my show that day, and how excited the staff was to see him come through those portals.
Yes.
So I felt it this morning when
feeling
I came
his presence
in.
and calling his name.
But we had, many celebrities who came right here. to be interviewed because I was from Los Angeles, and I knew a lot of them personally, so I was able to get them pretty easily.
Yeah.
They were so cooperative, in helping me out. They'd come here and, be interviewed for my program. And that kept our show exciting.
It did.
You never know who's going to be on next week and next week and next
right.
week.
And I know in just the minute we have left in this part of the conversation, you also had some really interesting guests, in particular, the head of the Ku Klux Klan. And you had such interesting conversations in that episode and in shows to follow and in the time to follow. You ended up changing his mind, convincing him to not use the N-word, but instead Negro. I mean, that speaks volumes to the types of conversations you were able to have.
Mm-hmm. Well, I knew before I met him, I knew that if I did try to do battle with him, knowing that we had opposite sides of thought-provoking subjects, that I would lose.
Mm-hmm.
I'd lose him right away. But I was curious to know what he's like on the inside. So I would dig deep, like, tell me why you go out and why you bring your children here to put on these white robes to go out to do bodily harm. What kind of parent are you?
Wow.
And I knew through our conversation he was active in his church, found out it was a Baptist church. I'm a Baptist.
Yeah.
Said, tell me about your Baptist church. See how it compares with my Baptist church. And he said, well, I'm chairman of the deacon board. I said, chairman of the
deacon board?
In my church, that chairmanship is high
right.
and well respected. So how did you feel standing before that congregation with bigotry in your heart?
Oof.
Standing there as the example.
I want to hear the answer to that question when we come back, and just the resolve as a petite black woman in 1960-something asking a Klan leader that type of question, the mark of the legend that you are. Our conversation is going to continue as Mrs. Clayton continues to share the stories of her incredible journey of triumph and adversity. She's staying here with us to keep talking about this remarkable journey and inspire all of us. Stick around. You don't want to miss a word of this conversation. We'll be right back.